Welcome to finally the video that everyone's been looking forward to. The Scar Deep Dive. Everyone's been waiting for this for a long time, and now I have a platform in which I feel like is the most effective way of delivering this, as well as a method. Um, Scar, as a lot of people know, is my favorite Disney villain. He's also my favorite character to play in this game. He's he fits he actually ticks so many boxes for me in terms of a character. So this is gonna be kind of a very personal video in terms of playing this game. Now, I will say this, like I've done with all these deep dives, this is my personal opinion. This is not the end all be all for this character. But I do want to say this before we get going. Scar, in my opinion, is the absolute hardest character in this game to play. He requires a very different thinking method on how you have to approach things. He requires a very aggressive playstyle that other characters can kind of play a little more passively or a little more aggressively. Scar has to really play aggressively um, the entire game. He's also incredibly risky, which makes him not necessarily a fun character for other people, for you to play with. Playing against is easy. Very easy ways to fate him, very obvious ways to approach. But the goal with this guide tonight is to make sure that when you are playing Scar in your games, I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to win. But we all know this little thing called the Hatuna, the Hakuna Matata Cyclone. My goal is to make sure that you don't get there and to make sure that you can get to a point where you're basically very close to winning. And even if you lose, you're just right there. Shout outs to Shatter Dice. I do not know if Shatter Dice is in the chat, but Shatter Dice and I actually played a really close Scar Gothel game where it was only a hero away from killing, and then Gothel kind of got me there, or by one trust. So, but yeah, this is let's talk about Scar tonight. We're gonna talk about the deep dive of Scar and why I enjoy playing this character and how you should play with and against him. So let's kind of go jump into it. So the goal, if you have absolutely no idea how to play this character, let's talk dirty here. Scar's goal is that he needs to have 15 strength in his succession pile. Now, what is the succession pile? So there's this hero called Mufasa. We all know him. He dies in this little movie called The Lion King. When Mufasa is defeated, Mufasa will start the succession pile. Once he's there, every hero that you defeat will go into this succession pile. Once there is at least 15 strength in here, you will be at your win condition. You want to go above that as much as you possibly can, and then start your turn with that much. Yes, spoiler alert, Mufasa dies in The Lion King. So that's the goal. You're basically, unlike other villains, a lot of the other villains have, defeat hero goals. Yzma's got one, Rat slightly has one, Captain Hook, Jafar sort of does, Ursula sort of does. A lot of these characters have defeat a hero goals. It is normally only one hero that you have to kind of worry about. Scar's got to kill a lot of stuff. He is the only character in this game where he actually has to defeat multitudes of heroes. At all times, period. He wants to kill. He is an aggressive monster. So, what Scar is, he is a high-risk, high-reward, aggressive engine-building character. There we go. We're starting to get into the weird terms I'm starting to develop for this game here. He needs to build an engine where he can kill. And kill a lot. At all times. So, let's kind of dive into some of those cards. Let's talk about the killing cards. Which, guess what? I think you all know what these cards are. They are the Hyenas. I'm just going to get them all out. There are tons of them, which are nice. So, we'll actually just start here. So, in the deck, there are 6 Hungry Hyenas, along with 3 unique Hyenas. Now, these are kind of unique in the way that the villain guide actually references the fact that these are Hyena cards. This Hungry Hyena is unique as for each Hyena at its location, it gains +1 strength. Now, on the surface, that seems really good. Because an early strat with that some of you folks will probably do if you're first time playing Scar is to stack a bunch of Hyenas at one location. And then you're like, all right, I got all these guys here. I'm going to try to find Mufasa and kill him. And then boom, Mufasa's dead. Nope, that's not going to happen. Let me explain to you why. So even if you manage to pull out Mufasa really early, this is your board state right now. Your opponent will eventually get to fate you and start playing around with other cards. We're going to ignore Nala because Nala's effect will kind of throw this off. Let's say Pumbaa. All right, Pumbaa's going to cover your fate action. Uh-oh, Rafiki's out. Uh-oh. What's going on here? You have played a good majority of your allies to one location, and if you'll notice, I can't easily go over here and play something and vanquish the monkey. I can't go over here and play something easily to vanquish the pig. You don't want to be spreading these hyenas in one location. You want to spread them out as much as you possibly can. There's also, the game also kind of encourages you to do this with a particular card, which we'll talk more about later. But here's the reason why. Now, we aren't Pete, and we don't have like 7 copies of Bandit and like 15 allies in our deck. But there are lots of allies. Usually what I try to recommend people do with the hyenas, and it doesn't necessarily matter what set of hyenas. You'll notice that I've got all the unique set, their own locations, but that doesn't necessarily matter. You could have things set up like this. You need to try to play it so there's at least 3 hyenas at their own locations. And then once you've got that, try to at least make it so one location has 2. If you get lucky and pull out more, then try to go for all 4 locations at once. But here's the kind of the idea. So let's pretend that the monkey's gone, all right? By doing this right here, if I really need to, actually, let's do this scenario. Monkey's here. I can move over here, use the move action, move this hyena, and then kill Rafiki. Pretty easy. And that will happen because Rafiki is a horrible hero, and we'll talk more about Rafiki at another point. But you want to spread them out so that way, as the heroes come out, you can take them out relatively quickly. Because one thing that's incredibly weird and unique to Scar, one of his huge weaknesses is his action economy. Scar is a character that needs these play card actions. He desperately needs them. And as you notice, if all of these locations get blocked by a hero, even before Mufasa is defeated, there is not a lot of stuff that Scar can do to play more cards. And the designers knew this, that he was going to have this issue. So he was the first character in the game to have a second location that had 2 play card actions on it. They knew that he needed to have that second play card to kind of keep moving with his aggression. Because like I said, very aggressive character. He needs to be killing a lot. He needs to be constantly pushing forward towards his goal. You need to keep these options alive at all times. You need to keep all of them out. Because if you are not able to play cards, that is Scar's biggest weakness. So you need to keep that stuff open. And you're going to make yourself vulnerable from the get-go if you play all your hungry hyenas that you get to one location. That is a very easy first time playing Scar mistake. I have also done this. It does not work. Like I said, the reason for that is that even before Mufasa's out, or even in this situation where you have Rafiki, or maybe even Pumbaa, or another hero, something like this, this is limiting your options. You need these play card actions as much as possible. And the 2 that you desperately need are at these prime locations. And even these locations right here, which are your combo spots, you need those open. So kill things. Kill them often. And the way that you make sure you do that is kind of setting up a defense. Spreading your hyenas out like this is going to make sure that you have the defense ready to go. And like I said, there's a card purely designed around making sure that you as the player are trying to play hyenas to multiple locations. That is kind of the goal here. Now, there are only 9 hyenas, and then there's only 2 other allies, these stampedes, which we'll talk about later. That's not a whole lot for how much you need to be killing. So, let's quickly talk about recycling. Scar actually has a relatively decent recycling tool. The thing that you'll notice is that all these hyenas cost 2. Which is not normal for a lot of the villains in this game. Usually they all have at least 1 ally that costs them 1. Scar, all of his allies, including the stampedes, cost 2. So he needs to have some decent power generation slash recycling going on to make sure you can pull the hyenas back out, generate power, all that good stuff. He's kind of expensive. He's not as expensive as a character like Hades, but let's go ahead and move these heroes out of the way. Let's kind of start talking about this stuff. First things first. Let's talk about the unique hyenas. These three. The way you need to view all three of these, they are all resource conserving tools. That's what all three of these are. Ed, I would say, is the best, followed by Shenzi, followed by Bonsai. And I've actually written Bonsai off a lot in my previous plays, but probably the past few months, I've actually put him back a little higher on, like, don't discard this guy. You always kind of want to have him out somewhere. Reason why they're conserving resource power, guys, is because they all work around power. That's all they work around. Ed makes it so when you play hyenas to his location, they're cheaper. Bonsai makes it so when you discard hyenas in any shape or form, you generate power, so you basically gain a little bit of your money back. And Shenzi lets you play one for free at any location. Keep that in mind. Any location. So when you get these guys, play them. The only recommendation I would say is that Bonsai should be played to the location you know you're going to be killing the most at. You've probably heard this term called the feeding grounds before with Scar, where it's usually kind of a strategy that a lot of people talk about is setting up a location where you're going to primarily kill stuff. While that is a good strategy when you're trying to kill Mufasa, it is not great in the later game when you need to be killing multiple heroes at once. So try to make a Bonsai the location where you're probably going to be killing the most at. But this is probably the only one in that case where you need to be thinking about that. Ed, you can probably play anywhere. I know that sounds weird, but Ed's really good at, playing a hyena for cheap and then moving them to a location where you may need them to go later. That's really what I've done with Ed, is that let's say you play him to Pride Rock and you need more at the Savannah. You can play a hyena for cost 1 and then use one of these move actions and then move them over, which is a really solid strategy. Same thing with Shenzi too. The thing with Shenzi that's nice is that you can play Shenzi at a location. Also, I recommend playing her to a vanquish location. We'll talk more about that here in a second. And then you can play this bonus hyena wherever you need to. You don't need to play it to Shenzi's location unless you absolutely need to kill something there and you need the extra hyena. But you can play that hyena anywhere, which is super beneficial. Super beneficial. And that's something a lot of people miss when you're playing Shenzi, because usually just play it together. But yeah, just spread the hyenas out. Spread the love. Like I said, really the biggest strategy I would say in terms of placement is Ed. Ed specifically, you want to play him at places where, all right, I need a hyena at this location. Well, guess what? Here, I'll gain the money. Ed's already there. Spend it, play the hyena, and move him over. Really good way of doing that. Now, I will say this too. Once you are able to get a money machine going with Scar, do not be afraid. Let's say if you need to play a hyena here or whatnot, don't feel like you need to play it to Ed's location. One of the other things I've seen a lot of people do is that they'll try to put Ed in the primary vanquish spot, and then they'll play the hyenas there. Don't do that. Sometimes you need to get a little risky, hence the character, and spend a little bit more to spread out the love. Because the more that you have out there, the more defense you're going to have against the heroes. Shatter Dice can attest to this, that when you have more allies out at all these locations, playing heroes, even if it's Rafiki, is a little bit more difficult. That actually happened earlier in our game. I had an ally right here, and it made it so, you don't want to play it to that location, even if it seems like the best spot. So, something to keep in mind with these guys. Shenzi. Let's talk about Shenzi really fast, because we'll actually loop this into the next topic with the recycling. Shenzi should be play to a location where we're going to kill stuff. The reason for that is that Ed and Bonsai's abilities can't really be duplicated and recycled. And what I mean by that is, like, all right, let's say you use Ed to kill something, which, by the way, don't be afraid to use Ed to kill stuff. Seriously, and we'll talk more about that later. Shenzi's ability can be duplicated and recycled. So let's say that you use this Hungry Hyena and Shenzi, and they both get discarded. Well, guess what? Guess what card that we're probably going to pull out here? I think I already pulled it out. Hold on. There it is. Be prepared. Also, shoutouts to probably the best artwork in the game. That might also be my nostalgia kicking in, but that's fine. Be prepared. Be prepared is probably one of the best cards in this guy's deck. Reason for that is that, like I said, you're going to be killing a lot of stuff, which means a lot of stuff is going to be going in your discard pile, and you need that stuff back. You play Be Prepared, you discard stuff from the top of your deck, try to cycle stuff out. Guess what? If Shenzi's already in your discard pile, grab her and that Hungry Hyena back. Guess what? You spend 2 power, you can instantly just pull that trick off again. It's super useful. That's what I usually try to do with Be Prepared, is try to grab back Shenzi and the Hungry Hyena, or Shenzi and a Stampede or another Hyena or whatnot, and just try to recycle that loop over and over again. Because in theory, what you're doing is you're essentially spending 2 to play 4 powers worth of allies, which is pretty dope. And then if you can combine that with stuff like, all right, Ed's out, play Shenzi here, and then play another Hyena to another location, you're essentially paying 1 for 4, which is dope. So use the Be Prepared loop to use that, get that out there. Shenzi should be the one you should be killing stuff with. I think that was slightly by design, maybe with her ability, and how these two are a little bit more passive, while this one is an immediate effect. Kind of makes design sense. But yeah, use Be Prepared to get that back out there. As long with all your other allies too. Be Prepared, in theory, looks like a card like Scrying. You might be, in theory, at the beginning of the game, might not have a lot of good stuff, and you might have Be Prepared in your hand. You mean like, all right, I might get rid of this, or I might play it and just try to hunt stuff down. Hold on to it if you can, and try to get stuff back out to kill. That is really the biggest tool with this. This is a recycling card. Probably the best recycling card in all of Villainous right now, where it literally can just grab stuff back that you have already used and absolutely need, and then you can put it back out there. Now, before we leave the allies, let's talk about the Stampedes a little bit. You'll notice that I probably haven't been talking about these a lot. So fun fact, drawing these early, discard them. You don't need them. The unique thing about Stampede is it's kind of it's a good and a bad thing with this card. What makes it good is that it's 3 strength. And a very common thing in the Fate deck here is that all the heroes except for 2 of them by default are at least 3 strength or less. So Stampede will kill a majority of the heroes in the deck. But the problem, though, is normally you want to play an ally to a location where a hero is. So let's pretend that the pig is here. Who you calling a pig? When you play it, guess what? You have to move this guy. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to do it. So placing these guys is a little odd. Now, the bonus of that is that even though you have to move them, you can vanquish at their location. So the plan is that, let's say you got Bonsai over here, you got this Hyena, you play the Stampede, you move the pig over, and guess what? He's dead. There you go. So you can kind of plan around using the Stampede as your bonus vanquish. Now, here's the tricks. And some of you probably already know this, but I probably should point this out. So let's say the pig is here. Let's say Nala is here for whatever reason. Let's do that. Something like this. Or maybe Nala's here. Let's actually start that there. So I'm at the Gorge. I have 2 power. Play Stampede. Move Nala. Kill the pig. Alright. Pig's dead. These guys go away. Then, move the Stampede. Kill Nala. Guess what? 2 vanquishes in one go. That move action is super, super useful. Keep this space open at all times. It is why the Gorge is so powerful to kill stuff. As soon as you have a Stampede, you can vanquish, essentially, as long as you got the setup going, incredibly, incredibly, incredibly efficiently. And the nice thing, too, it is 3 strength. There's lots of good things you can do with it. Now, some people will be like, well, if I don't have any heroes out, should I just play Stampede? No, don't do it. The reason for that is that the Stampede's ability is too powerful. And the thing is that if you play Stampede over here, and let's say Mufasa's over here, that Stampede's abilities basically got wasted and it's just hanging out. Sure, yes, you could use it to maybe vanquish something that comes along later, but you wasted the extra ability to vanquish. And like I said, Scar is incredibly aggressive. You need to have all your aggression tools at all times, in all places. You absolutely need to. So if you can't vanquish stuff, especially in the early game when you're not ready to, you play the hyenas over the stampedes, discard them. And the thing is, if you feel like you're going to need it later, you have 3 copies of Be Prepared in your deck. So you can always fish the stampedes back out with it and get them back in hand and just get ready to demolish with it. So keep that in mind as well. That's another cool thing with Be Prepared is that, hey, you early game aren't getting your allies that you need. You can discard them or discard some cards like Stampede or another powerful effects you might want, and then you can go back and fetch them later. So you don't have to vanquish the hero that's moved. No, you do not. That is not required. So like if let's say Mufasa's here and I play the Stampede and move it over, you do not. You do not have to vanquish. Something else that you may need to keep in mind with the Stampede is that, like I said, action economy is really important with Scar. So you might find it that, especially at the Savannah, this is probably the most brutal spot because this is the other Fate location that Scar has, and this is also the reset spot, but it's on top. You might find yourself playing Stampede to move heroes around like that, but there's other more effective ways to be moving heroes around, which we'll talk about. So that is something to keep in mind, though, is that if you don't have any of those tools that we're going to be talking about and you need to move somebody around and get more action economy, you can play Stampede. Now, the thing to keep in mind with this, though, the reason why that bottom card action is not available in some of these places, obviously here, is that, let's say if you played Stampede here, then you get your Fate option back open. That was probably designed on purpose like that, because then you have a really powerful ally out, and you can Fate. All that stuff. It's really, it would be way too busted with Scar. So, but you do desperately need this in order to still play defense. So, if you need to do it, use it. But honestly, set your Stampedes up to gain your bonus vanquishes. And the thing, too, is, like I said, most of the heroes you're going to end up killing after Mufasa are going to be 3. And if you're planning on having at least 2 hyenas at a location, you're guaranteed to get that stuff. And the nice thing, too, is that even though that's gone, you might be set up like this. You have a 3-strength ally sitting on the board right now. That can kill anything except Simba. The only thing. And in theory, it could kill Simba with some tools. So, yeah. So, there's your allies. There's your allies of Scar's deck. I do have a soft spot for these allies. I think they're also some of the best allies in the game. I think the only thing that holds them back from being the absolute best is the fact that they are expensive. 2 might not seem that expensive, but they are expensive. Speaking of expensive, let's talk about the power stuff here. Because of that, these 2 locations, Pride Rock and the Elephant Graveyard, are going to be your primary ways of gaining money. Something else you'll need to keep in mind, too, is that the Savannah. This is a very prime location I like going to turn 1 because you, especially in the early game, even if you gain 3, you won't be able to play 2 hyenas at once. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to the Savannah turn 1, discard a bunch of stuff, gain the power, don't play, and then Fate. So it's actually a really good way to kind of set myself up early to make sure I can keep moving forward. Because 4 power can go a long way with Scar. Because if you go here with 3, more than likely you're not going to be able to play anything. And even though playing a Be Prepared or Long Live the King, which we'll talk about, might be tempting, you don't want to maybe play those super early in the game. There you go. Stuntman says that. Nope. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So gain the money, don't play anything, and then save it. And then if you still have the space open, they're gonna let you keep that. Because the thing too, which you will find out, a lot of people fading Scar are gonna go for the Savannah or the Gorge first. That's their 2 places I found that the players that play against me go for. So you're gonna usually keep the Elephant Graveyard and Pride Rock open. So as long as you can gain that free money at first, that 4 power, the start is going to be really solid. So strongly recommend doing that. Now, what are some other good ways of gaining power with Scar? Ed's one. Let's talk about the other one. Pride Rock or anywhere. Guess what? You have a hyena at the graveyard. Stick with me. Stick with me is a card that allows you to take an action out of Hyena's location. Guess what? People forget about this because Stick with Me, in theory, is used as a vanquish tool, which we'll get to. But in the early game, when you can't kill stuff, play your first Hyena to the Elephant Graveyard, and then when you get Stick with Me, gain the money. I've had so much power because of this. Because usually what I will do is that after I've gone here or I've gone to the Savannah, I'll go to Pride Rock, gain 2. Maybe there was a Hyena or 2 at the Savannah. I'll spread one out over here or play one here and then move it to the Savannah. It's a beautiful thing about, or not the Savannah, Pride Rock. So just to show that setup in an actuality right here, you initially would play the Hungry Hyena here. That's where it goes. You would then play Stick With Me. So you're going to gain the 3 by taking that action. Then, like I said, the Savannah or the Gorge are going to be the most likely places that Hyena is going to go, or the heroes are going to go. So you can play or use the move actions and then move the Hungry Hyena to that location wherever you need them to go. That's super beneficial about this. You can almost do the same thing at the Gorge, where you may have the Hyena here, and then after you maybe used one to vanquish, and then you got the spare one left over, move one over, and guess what? Play Stick With Me and gain the free money. So, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid. Now, in all honesty, the real use of Stick With Me is to gain a free vanquish action. Because guess what? Wherever a Hyena is, you can take any action that's not a fade action. So, the idea is that you always want to keep a Hyena at the Gorge, so that way you can play Stick With Me and take a free vanquish. It doesn't cost anything. It just requires you to have a Hyena at the Gorge to do so. Now, here's the thing. Do not have the Hyena that's being stored over here be Shenzi. Unless you absolutely have to for whatever reason. Thing is, because you want to use Shenzi to vanquish. So any of the other Hyenas are pretty good. Even the engine building ones like Ed and Bonsai aren't horrible to have at the Gorge to do this. Because like I said, you can play Ed over here, spend the money, and then move them to the Elephant Graveyard with the free move if you're at Pride Rock. But this location probably won't be primarily used to vanquish, based off some setup stuff that the Fader is going to be doing to you. So try not to keep Shenzi be the Hyena being stored at the Gorge. You want to try to use Shenzi to kill stuff because, like I said, be prepared as how you recycle that. And if Shenzi's not being used to vanquish, you're not popping her ability off as much as you would like. So do keep that in mind. But yes, play to the Gorge. Now, how early should you play to the Gorge? The way I like to play my Hyenas, I like to start with the Savannah. And then I like to go to the Elephant Graveyard. And then kind of based off how heroes start coming out, then I'll start kind of spreading them. I usually will end up playing it like Savannah, Graveyard, Gorge, in that form. Because there's only 3 copies to Stick With Me. So this ability is really good to have on tap. How often you're pulling it off won't be as often as you think it will be. But just having that option. Theme of the show, options. It's very, very necessary. So strongly recommend making sure you do have a Hyena at the Gorge. Very useful. And then +2, if you are starving for power, having someone at the Elephant Graveyard, Stick With Me, gain that free 3. Pretty nice. So, let's talk about... Basically, there's only 3 other effects we have to cover in Scar's Fate deck. Because believe it or not, one of the actual powerful strengths of Scar, and we've talked about this a lot with Hook over the past week, Scar is incredibly consistent with his deck. Usually, as long as you aren't running out of card play stuff to do, you always will have the ability to play something you need to play. His cards are incredibly consistent. Now, the only difference between him and Captain Hook is that his cards are a little bit more situational. I might be a little biased on that, but they are a little bit more situational than Captain Hook. Captain Hook's cards, you can essentially play those at any time and just be okay with whatever you play. Scar, you kind of have to think a little bit more with the cards you're playing, because they are a little bit more risky to play. Let's talk about the 2 risky cards. So, Long Live the King and Whisper. So let's start with Long Live the King, because it's a little bit more straightforward to card. So obviously, you need to start off by trying to kill the king himself, Mufasa. Mufasa is your primary target. And not only that, once Mufasa's dead, you need to start actually going for the kill. The way to get him out is Long Live the King. Because if you'll notice, if you look at Mufasa's card, unlike Peter Pan, he does not have to be played when he's pulled out. And the likeliness of him being pulled out with something that can be played is pretty likely. So, long live the king. You know, fetch those cards out, all that stuff. Now, in the early game, do not play any heroes. Now, I know what you're all thinking. But Joker, Zazu, he makes it so when they're at the same location, he's -2. I want to play him. Well, all right, I pulled out Zazu early before Mufasa's out there. What is that doing? That's blocking actions. I don't care where the bird's going to go. He's blocking actions. Zazu is horrible. I don't like him. He is useful in certain circumstances. Don't get me wrong. And there's a particular scenario that you should probably go for if he's out. But, no. Don't play Mr. Bean. Don't play John Oliver. Just don't ever do it. Because the other thing you have to keep in mind is that there's a lot of stuff that can counter this strategy right here. Hakuna Matata. Nala gets played. Rafiki gets played. All of that is horrible. Horrible, horrible stuff. Because Zazu makes it so all the heroes get +1 strength. Now, that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but that completely negates Stampede. Completely negates Stampede for other heroes. It completely makes it so, by default, if you want to stack hyenas and 3 hungry hyenas, please never call him John Oliver again. Don't worry. I may or may not do that. But I haven't even seen the movie, so I can't even speak to it. But yeah, you don't want to play the bird. He is a nuisance. He will make it so you have to spend more resources than you need to. Yeah, don't play the bird. I like I said, I know for a fact that it looks good on paper, but you should only be doing that if, let's say, like Zazu's over here, okay? You have this, Hakuna Matata, or you have a Stampede in hand or something like that. You can play Stampede, move the bird over, and then vanquish him for less. You can't guarantee those situations, though. So don't be willingly playing the bird out if you can. Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, I was going to say, Zazu is one of the most annoying cards in the game, because if he's played, he's really good. If he's at the same location, but if he's elsewhere, he's really bad. He's annoying. I don't like him. So, yeah. Go away, Mr. Bean. No one likes you. So, no, also, shouts to Mr. Bean. But, yeah. So, just keep that in mind with Long Live the King. Use this to fish out Mufasa as early as possible. The nice thing, too, is that there's 4 copies of this in the deck. And since it's 4 cards every time you pull that out in a 15-card Fate deck, if you absolutely have to, you can play all 4 and get Mufasa. Basically guaranteed. Now, like I said, what will happen, though, is that our friend Mufasa, let's say this is the pull. This is what the opponent gets to play. He gets to play I almost said John Oliver. John Oliver and James Earl Jones right here. They're going to be like, I'm going to play John Oliver to the Savannah. And then Mufasa goes away. And you're like, crap. What am I going to do? Well, Whisper. That is what comes into play. Use Whisper, pull the hero back out and such. Now, here's the deal. Whisper says choose a card from your Fate discard pile and play it. So you basically are playing a Fate card onto yourself. Now, here's the cool thing. Hakuna Matata is going to be what you want to use this card with most of the time before Mufasa is defeated. The reason for this is that Hakuna Matata, the other effect, is that allows you to move a hero to any location in the realm. So what will happen is that, let's say you got the Zazu situation right here. If you're right here at the Gorge, use Whisper, move him over. Make it so not only you free up your action economy, but Mufasa is also going to be less on your bad side. On top of that, too, if you got more heroes out, and this is the only time I recommend doing this, let's say you got the bird here. You really want to keep the Fate action open? Move it. Use Whisper. That is one option. You can also, if you absolutely need to, hero stack. So stack them all at one location. I don't recommend doing this because the problem is if you stack all the heroes at one location, so let's say you get to the point where there's 3 like this, that means you got to put most of your allies over here. And then if heroes get played back out, guess what? They're going to be played over here, which is a far walk. And granted, yeah, you got Hakuna Matata in there, but there's only 3 copies of Whisper. And you really, towards the end game, want to be using Whisper to fish out heroes that you had to discard when you were looking for Mufasa. This is a great defense tool using Hakuna Matata, but you really want to primarily use this to fish the heroes back out and put them in there and kill. A very strong tactic I tell people all the time is that play these cards when you know you can kill. The risk factor that comes into that is sometimes you know you might be able to pull out Mufasa and go for it. So sometimes, even when the Fate deck is stacked, so I'll just put Mufasa out just for example purposes. You don't have Mufasa out. You have this set up right here. Pretend all these guys are away. Shuffle that up. Mufasa is one of the cards. Now you took a gamble, but you'll play him there. Move Shenzi over to get the most out of your hyenas, and then bam, Mufasa's dead. Because the issue is, what will happen sometimes, that if you play Long Live the King too early and get Mufasa out, then guess what? You're losing your action economy. You don't have the heroes or the allies available to kill him. So you should really try to set up the engine before you play Long Live the King. Now, if you start your turn with a bunch of Long Live the Kings, or the game with a bunch of Long Live the Kings, if you start with more than 2 or more than 1, discard 1 and keep 1 in hand. The thing is, unlike Captain Hook, Scar's Fate deck is kind of geared around making the opponent not so scared to Fate, because a lot of these cards are very powerful. They're, even by default before Mufasa is played, they're pretty good. So they won't be really afraid to play it out. So if you need to wait and pull out another Long Live the King later down the road, that's cool. And you gotta remember too, I know I didn't talk about it, but Be Prepared also allows you to fetch effects back out, but only 1, not 2. So if you feel like you really need to fetch this back out because you're just not finding it, you can do it that way too. But set up the engine, get the allies out, get that going first, and then you should be good. Because as long as you keep your board clear, Scar is in a pretty solid shape. Yeah, but that's the risky part, because you as the player have to make a decision. If you're going to be pulling heroes out using Long Live the King or Whisper, will you be able to vanquish them next turn? Will you be able to know that the Fate deck isn't going to screw you over? Because that's something you have to keep in mind. If I play Whisper, can I immediately kill using Stick With Me or a Stampede? Because if they're put out there, let's say Rafiki comes out, let's say, the Prophecy is attached to that hero and no longer you can't kill him because of the strength issue. Maybe they get moved with Hakuna Matata, all that stuff. That can all be problems that come in your way. And you need to be prepared to make sure, no pun intended, be prepared to kill them immediately or as fast as possible. Because as soon as you get that hero out, the opponent will want to Fate you. And this also comes into mind where, like, as a Scar player, you need to focus on when you Fate covering the Fate action of your opponent. You absolutely need to try to cover the top one. If you could try to limit the amount that they can Fate you back, that is incredibly strong with him. I know our meta has kind of developed recently to make it so you target more of these combo utility locations. But with Scar, you got to think differently. You got to cover the extra Fate so that way you don't just get barraged and get destroyed, because his Fate cards are incredibly powerful. So you got to keep that in mind. Last card, Feeding Frenzy. So a lot of you are going to write this card off because it's kind of weird. Yeah, it was unintentional, Purple Potato. It was an unintentional pun. What does Feeding Frenzy do? It is 2 cost, where it allows you to move any number of hyenas to 1 location. What this essentially is that it's a defense tool if you don't have Hakuna Matata in the discard pile along with Whisper. Like I said, the main ally you're going to have is a hyena. Hyena's out on the board, so this references all of them, including the unique ones. And you play Feeding Frenzy. Let's say Nala's over here, and you're like, well, crap, I'm not going to be able to move there fast enough. If I got 2 power, I can play it, move 2 of them over, and then kill her. Stuff like that. It's expensive. It's not necessarily the best tool. That's why there's only 2 of them, but it's essentially an emergency defense card. Early game, get rid of it. Late game, however, it's not a horrible idea if you got the money to keep it in hand. Because even if you got Hakuna Matata, it moves a hero. You might not guarantee to be able to move the hero and then move an ally over to kill. That might be a great time to summon all your hyenas over and make sure that the hero is going to die. all that good stuff. Someone just asked, so also, so I assume it's, so also vanquish even if it won't contribute to the succession pile. Yes, yes, yes. I will tell you up front. Let's say this is my starting scenario. Mufasa's not even dead yet. If Nala is covering the savannah, or this action, or this action, or this action, you will have to multitask. You're still going to have to work on trying to find Mufasa. You're still going to have to work on building the engine, output the hyenas. But kill the heroes. Even if they don't go into that succession pile, you need to get rid of them so that way you can free up your action economy. This is also super useful too, because especially if they pull Rafiki out and they play Rafiki early, you can get rid of Rafiki, and then he's going to stay in the discard pile for a while, which is really solid. He won't be coming back out. So kill the heroes. Because then the problem is, let's say, you keep Nala out here and you killed Mufasa and stuff. Like, sure, Nala will go there, but you worked against trying to kill Mufasa while you lost those actions, or these actions, or what have you. You want every tool in your kit at all times. I know it's weird, and that's the thing. Passive players that play Scar will want to find Mufasa and ignore the heroes. And they'll just play that one, to get that one stomping grounds and kill them that way. And then they're swamped with a bunch of heroes that they can't kill because they burn all their resources. They don't have enough actions. Kill the heroes. Get rid of them at all times. That is literally the best advice I can give everybody. You cannot play passive with Scar. You have to play aggressive. Because those actions, like I said, those play cards are super important for Scar. And if you do not have them, you will be screwed. You will lose. And that's what happens, is that in the late game, what will happen is that even if you have defeated Mufasa, we all know what this lovely card is. This is going to bring back basically any of the heroes except for Simba and Mufasa from the succession pile and play them out. It's essentially like a return to form and cards like that basically revive heroes and play them out that way. When you start getting swamped and start losing all your action economy, you will start slowing down a lot because you won't be able to play a bunch of cards. You have to constantly be killing. Even if it's a weird like tug and pull of, let's say Pumbaa's the only other hero and he keeps coming in and out and all that stuff, you got to keep in mind that, guess what? Since they're playing Hakuna Matata so much, they're not playing the other heroes out, and then you could take advantage of doing like double kills with Stampede and Whispers and stuff like that. Take advantage of if they're going to keep playing Hakuna Matata. Because that's what they're going to go for. They want to go directly for your succession pile once Mufasa's out there. And the nice thing, too, is that if you have a clean board and Mufasa's in your succession pile, you're going to scare them. They don't want to fate you. Nothing that they can do at that moment. So Hakuna Matata doesn't work. Prophecies don't work. The freaking stick. I hate this card. This card sucks. I don't know why it exists. Go away. I don't like it. But and I don't need to talk about that card. Everyone knows what this card does. It's awful. Just get rid of it. Yeah, just get rid of it. Yeah. Now, the nice thing, I know I say that, but Hakuna Matata, Rafiki Stick, and Prophecy are all horrible cards. There are 3 copies of Hakuna Matata, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's 3 copies of Prophecy. Yes, there is. That is a lot of bad cards. Prophecy is also the strongest fate item that increases strength. Rafiki Stick, we all know what it does. Makes it so you have to basically kill a hero twice before they go away. Long live the king, those items out of existence. I was doing this before doing it with where the opponent was cool. Use Long Live the King and get rid of those crappy items you know that are coming up. If you know there's going to be a copy of Hakuna Matata coming up to fish a hero out, or the freaking stick, or a bunch of prophecies, play it. Even if you don't get a hero, just go away. They can all go away doing that. It's super useful. However, I will say this. I have heard people talk early game about, all right, if I get a Zazu or something like that, where's the bird? I don't even know where the bird is at this point. All the cards are all over the place. There we go. Where's the bird? Here's the bird. Play the bird. Play the stick on the bird. No, don't do it. That's a horrible idea. Here's the problem. You've immediately basically reduced your entire fate deck by 2. Because you're never going to kill Zazu. There's no reason to kill him. Especially at 2 strength, that's just almost idiocy. And here's the other thing too. You're also just basically permanently blocking a location. And And the thing is, as you defeat more heroes and they go in your succession pile, the thing you got to remember, effects and items do not go in there. So these cards go back in the Fate deck. And that means they're going to get recycled. Which means you need to try to keep the Fate deck as thick as possible when you're playing with Scar. So, kill stuff so that way prophecies go away, Stick goes back in there, Hakuna Matata doesn't come back in there as much, so that way the Fate deck stays thick. And then, and then possibly, as long as you're actively forcing the opponent to keep playing Hakuna Matata, the other heroes that they haven't brought out yet are going to stay in there, which is also useful to keep that as thick as well. Usually by the end, you should be having at least maybe 2 to 3 copies of heroes in the Fate deck if you're playing it right. It also depends on what heroes you defeat too. But yeah, so keep that in mind as well. You want to keep this Fate deck as thin as possible because all these cards suck. You don't want to see those very often. But yeah, I think I've covered everything on the villain side. He's very action economy heavy. You have to play aggressive, so set up stampedes, stick with me stuff, go vanquish often. You can't play him passively. And I think the problem is a lot of these characters in Villainous, we saw it at the tournament. There's characters that even can play fast, can play passively, and still do okay. They don't necessarily have to kill stuff, and they can still set up for their win conditions pretty easily. Scar can't do that. He can't stack heroes. He has to kill. He always has to be vanquishing heroes that come out on the board at all times, or else he will lose, and he will get fate swamped. Oh, conditions. I didn't even talk about the conditions, because if we're being honest, you shouldn't have to think about them, but they are important. Pride and Justice. Pride's difficult because if you're playing against characters that aren't fishing for cards, you won't pop it very often. But it is super good because, like I said, Scar kind of starts off a little power starved at the beginning, and until you start gaining some power and start not having to spend so much on cards, you won't have to worry about this too much. But if you know your opponent's looking for a card and they have to discard, Pride's pretty good. And if the opponent knows you probably have it, it's going to at least force them to not discard as many as they like. So then after you know that they're not going to probably discard anymore, just go ahead and get rid of it. But if you know they are going to, you got to bait them. You got to bait them to discarding a lot of cards. So Pride them. So it's still good. I know people write this card off. It's still a really decent card. You just have to play against characters you know they're going to fish. If they're the characters that are looking for particular items and stuff like that, and they're really struggling, Jafar is a perfect example of this. Pride's the way to go. Keep Pride on you at all times, because there's no reason that if Jafar doesn't have the Scarab pendant after using scrying, after discarding, there's no reason not to play this card and keep it in hand. Injustice. Downright probably the best condition in the game. I will say that up front. Not only, like, if you gave this to any character, this would be good. It doesn't matter who it would be. It's incredibly good. You basically get to mitigate what you get fated. It is the only card that really gets to do that. Obviously, Ratigan and Yeast might have kind of similar ways of like, oh, you get fated, you do this. But this card literally allows you to mitigate what's going to come out and kill you. This card has saved me so many games because I know Hakuna Matata is coming, and I can play Injustice and get rid of the Hakuna Matata. Now, this is what I will say. So, I mean, it's funny that I keep bringing up Hook, because Hook and Scar are relatively similar kind of play styles. They kind of play relatively semi-aggressive. Yeah, Give Him a Scare is like a reverse Injustice, I suppose. Yeah, I agree. With Give Him a Scare, when you play it, if you get 2 items as Captain Hook, you might keep them on the top of the Fate deck. Because you know for a fact that that even if it's not Peter, you might want the opponent to play this because they can't be played. The same deal goes with Injustice. If you see something like a Prophecy and an Hakuna Matata, and that's what can't be played because there's no heroes out, let it run. You want them to take a dead Fate draw. You don't want them to try to fish out a possible hero they can play that's not Mufasa and all that stuff. And speaking of that, another good reason to be killing heroes. I just realized I don't even know where Mufasa is right now, but there he is. Guess what? If you're killing heroes, that means Hakuna Matata, Prophecy, and Stick can't be targeted. which means if you pull Mufasa out with one of these, they have to play him. Yeah, superiority does a very similar thing. As long as you know, but the thing with superiority is you have to know the cards, though. You already have to take that extra step. With injustice, you kind of just look right then and there and kind of make a decision. But yeah, killing stuff makes it so, guess what? If that's the combo the opponent has to do, they're playing Mufasa. That's also why you want to kill stuff. This is not Peter Pan where he just gets played immediately. You have to kill stuff so that way Mufasa can get forcefully be played. Because like I said, Scar's Fate deck, they're going to want to play those cards because all these cards are relatively good cards to play regardless. But yeah, these scenarios, because remember, 3 copies of Hakuna Matata, 3 copies of Prophecy, then a stick. That is 7 of 15 Fate cards. So it's a pretty good chance that Mufasa can turn up with one of those if you're killing stuff. So yeah, keep that in mind. And it's really good too, because what you might do is that, let's say you pull Pumbaa, Hakuna Matata. That's your Injustice pull. No heroes on the board. Put Pumbaa back, let the Hakuna Matata ride. So, there you go. That's a relatively straightforward thing with Injustice. You basically want to fish out the stuff that you want. Now, if you do get 2 heroes, kind of the rule of thumb with me personally is that the ones that have immediate effects like Nala, Sarabi, and Rafiki, I don't necessarily like playing those. So if you do get them in the Injustice pool, get rid of them. Pumbaa, Timon, and even Zazu, I'm okay with them riding. Even Simba, because they're all passive. All of these characters, granted, Rafiki's is passive, but his is a more an immediate effect, where these can actually severely hinder you from the get-go. So try to get rid of these with Injustice pulls if you can. It's worth getting rid of them because you don't want them to hinder you as much as possible. So, but yeah, that is Scar. That is Scar in a nutshell. That's basically as much as I could talk about him before I take some FAQ. Speaking of questions, ask me now, everybody. This is the teacher coming out and Joker here. So if you are the Scar player and you're playing heroes, the best advice I could tell you is you should not be playing heroes out if you're not ready. So Whisper and Long Live the King to play heroes out should not be done that way. You want to play heroes to places where they're going to die. And that's the point I was trying to make is if you're going to go to the Gorge and you want to kill something, make sure you got the cards to do it. Or even here, don't just be playing Whisper or Long Live the King and fish them out. You will sometimes have to do that, and I readily know that. But you also, this goes back to what I was saying of set the opponent up to make sure that they can't fate you on the next turn so you can kill. That's just sometimes part of the game. You really want to try to set it up so when you play these cards, play in locations where they're going to die. And not to mention, too, the fact that, like, Zazu on Timon is pretty good, but I don't even rely on that anymore because, like I said, I hate the bird so much. It's awful that I just usually murder the bird as soon as possible. I hate the bird. So you guys probably could tell I hate the bird. I hate the things that seem obvious in this game that people like to do. What are some of Scar's best and worst matchups? All right, let's get the board out. So, as you probably saw in my tier list, Scar is probably middle of the road in terms of the tier list. I put him a little bit above Jafar. His best matchups are the characters that have to run way too slow, that are passive. There's a few exceptions to that, which I'll talk about, but like Jafar is a good example. Evil Queen is also a really good example because she can't fate as hard. Like, I've been running against a lot of Evil Queens as Scar, and it's been going relatively in my favor. I know Corella's not a great, is a good matchup for Scar. Rat is also a decent matchup for Scar. Dr. Facilier, he edges out a little bit, but it's pretty close 50-50. Hades, he's also pretty good. The matchups he gets destroyed at are Queen of Hearts, Captain Hook, and Prince John. And the reason for that is the fact that Queen of Hearts is just incredibly fast for some reason against Scar. And I don't know why. I think it's because she just has better fate locations. Because like characters like Dr. Facilier and even Evil Queen don't have as strong as fate locations. and Queen of Hearts, both of her locations are relatively good, and she's usually progressing towards her goal when she goes to those locations. So she's moving pretty fast, and when you fate a lot against Scar, he just gets destroyed. Captain Hook is the same deal. He's gonna be fading basically every other turn. Same thing with Prince John. That's why these two characters right here. Prince John is probably the only passive character that can play against Scar that will actually kind of ride him over, because his goal overall is relatively easy to accomplish. It doesn't require a lot of legwork to do so, and goes a lot against like what Scar wants to try to go against. Because like I said, you want to cover the top fade action. Prince John's got a lot of tools to mitigate that and actually go towards his goal. You got Sir Hiss, you got the shenanigans with bow and arrows, golden arrow stuff, to kill the hero that's on top of there. There's all sorts of tools that Prince John can do. Ursula. Funny enough, I have beat several fate spamming Ursulas as Scar, and I think it's just the fact that Ursula gets clogged down pretty fast because she always only has 3 locations. She once you fate her once or twice as Scar, she is kind of just rolling. She can't really do a whole lot. And Scar can come out on top because even if she's trying to fate spam Scar, that can come in his favor, especially if you're playing aggressively towards the goal as well. You said Scar is aggressive, but he's not great at fading back. He kind of is, but you have to make sure you have the engine to do it. That's why I'm saying keep the Savannah open, because early game, the Gorge isn't going to be super great unless you're ready to kill stuff. So you want to try to keep the Savannah open, because what I usually do, turn 1, go to Savannah if I have bad cards. You know, that's usually where I go, and I'll go back and forth between these 2 locations, which is a pretty solid plan. And then once you got the engine going, then you could start kind of cycling back and forth between these 3, and then maybe lay off the Savannah a little bit unless you feel like you need a fate back. But yeah, keeping the Savannah open's good, but this is part of what slows him down a little bit, is that once the opponent sees that, they'll be placing heroes here, so you'll have to start kind of playing a little bit more aggressively towards this location. I do think he's good. I do think he's actually really strong at fading back, because he specifically has to target the top fate action of the opponent if he can. And that's why, honestly, characters like Prince John and Captain Hook, he struggles a lot against, because they're... Prince John has ways to mitigate the top fate action, and Captain Hook always will have that bottom fate action by default. And when he's trying to play the map, discarding at fate is great. So, it's fantastic. But yeah, I think, like I said, what makes Scar super difficult to play is the fact that he is the most aggressive character, and he has a little bit of risk involved with him when you play him. When you do play it right, though, he's incredibly fast and he's incredibly powerful. But if you get bogged down by too many heroes, so Yzma can be tough too. Yzma's about 50-50. I've had some really favorable Yzma matches playing against as Scar, but then I've also had some matches that haven't gone my way. Granted, this was before your Yzma shenanigans that you brought into this. So I don't know if that will change. Because if Yzma's going to be able to go back and forth between the meat hut, as long as I'm able to cover up the meat hut, I might be in good shape. But that's like a mindset thing. So yeah, the matchups I would say that run 50-50 for Scar: Yzma, Gothel, Pete of all people. Maleficent can run 50-50. If you want to give Doctor the benefit of the doubt, Facilier. But I feel like he still edges them out a little bit. But Rat, Cruella, Evil Queen, Hades, Ursula, and Jafar. He runs pretty well against them. Really well. Really well. Surprisingly. And the thing, too, you got to keep in mind, Scar does not have any items. He has 3 copies of Prophecy and the Stick. And he's not willingly playing those to pop conditions. So, all those conditions that require items, Jafar, you're not playing Deception on Scar. If ever. Never, ever. Now, that manipulation one you'll definitely pull off, but the thing is, you can't do the manipulation deception shenanigans. How and when to use Bonsai? like I said, the best thing about Bonsai is that you just want to play him to a location where you know you're going to kill stuff, because you want to play him to a place where you're going to be able to generate the free money. That's the kind of the best way I can go about saying that, because and then something I do want to keep this in mind is the fact that these unique hyenas are really powerful. You know, Ed, Bonsai, Shenzi, they're all really good. Ed especially, I have to shout this out to. You will have to force to think that yes, Ed will sometimes have to be used to vanquish. So, like in this situation, if you had to kill using both of these hyenas, you're gonna net yourself 1 power and lose Bonsai. But just accept it. You're just gonna have to accept that fate, literally. So Hook running the tournament makes Scar a tough choice. Yeah, he kind of is. Personally, the thing is, if the tournament was dominated by Evil Queen, Scar could probably go in and probably give her a run for her money, like in a very good way. Even really strong Evil Queen players. And this isn't just to shout out the match, but like the match I did with Lower the Board, he's playing a really good Evil Queen. I still kind of was able to fate hard enough back and kill enough aggressively the entire time to win. I've done this against other Evil Queens too with Scar. It works pretty well in his favor. As long as you're fading correctly against the Evil Queen, because she's also got a huge issue where you're blocking action. She has a hard time. What do you think was the biggest thing that changed about the perception of Scar that moved him up from bottom tier to the typical tier list? Remembering all this Scar can't win stuff. Mindset. Like I said, every single one of these villains in this game, even the ones that have to kill heroes, can play moderately passively. Scar is the only villain in this game you have to play aggressively. You got to constantly be killing stuff. You can't sit there and have heroes standing out there. Literally, his goal is encouraging that. Like, you need to kill stuff all the time. You can play characters like Dr. Facilier, who doesn't necessarily have a strong Vanquish game, and still come out on top and play semi-passively. I think that's the mindset shift, because I've seen lots of people, even in the early days, using like Akuna Matata and like playing Zazu early and like, you know, stacking all the hyenas at one location. So then they're like being spread thin on where to put stuff. You know, and Wero made this joke, I think, on the tournament stream that when I was talking about, because, you know, Wero was the one that actually really helped me change the mindset of how to play this character. It was thanks to him. The hyena engine is literally what this is. You just got to build that up, and you have to be aggressive. You have to be. That's what changed. And once you play more aggressively with Scar, you can win. You can win really good. Real good. He's incredibly good when he's playing aggressive. But if you're playing anywhere near passively with him, you're gonna be destroyed. It's like trying to play a rushdown character in a fighting game like a zoner. You know, like rushdown characters don't have projectiles. So you're gonna play from a distance with the character? No, because they don't have any zoning tools. They don't. It's the same deal. Literally, that's what Scar is. He is a rushdown character, and he has no passive. He has no passive tools. He has none. No pass. I mean, he does, but they're towards his goal. They don't work out very well. And his realm specifically is calling out the fact that, hey, you want these play card actions, keep those clean. Keep them clean. If you play him aggressively, I think that's the mindset shift. And granted, I'm not saying Scar's the best character in this game. Not by a long shot. At least not right now. At least in the current meta. But, yeah. He's still a really decent character. He's a little above middle of the road. And I want people to have fun, because I know a lot of people like The Lion King. And I love The Lion King. It's one of my favorite Disney animated movies. It is my favorite Disney animated movie. Scar's my favorite villain. Yeah, almost like playing the character like the actual character from the movie. Yeah, what's Scar's whole thing? He's trying to kill people. Long live the king, literally. But I think that's all. That's all I got from my end. Any other questions? Because then we'll get into the fate. Because the fate is actually relatively simple with Scar. That's kind of the funny thing, is like playing it as the villain. It's really difficult, but fading Scar is something else. It's a little easy. Probably the easiest fate deck in the entire game. Yeah, it's true. Truly is the coup of the century. No joke. No joke. All right. Let's go ahead and try to talk about the Fate deck here. If you guys have any more questions about the villain deck, we could save them for the end. But this is relatively a simple Fate deck to kind of dive into. It is probably probably the most consistent, powerful deck. Like, Ursula's got some brutal cards. I'm not going to deny that, but there's only 2 of them. Hades has overall got a really consistent Fate deck. Scar's Fate deck is incredibly powerful and incredibly inconsistent. So it's pretty easy to play this stuff out. Now, here's the deal. And this is kind of the interesting thing. If the Scar player is not playing aggressive, his Fate deck is super bonkers. Like, it's incredibly good because by just playing the heroes out, you are automatically going to be getting some wild stuff going on here. Case in point, Timon and Pumbaa. Like, I know we make the joke about how the Mad Hatter and the rabbit from was it Queen of Hearts is kind of pointless and stupid, but these 2 out together is like bonkers good. I always point out to people the fact that, all right, Pumbaa's 5 now, he's now 8, so he's basically stronger than Mufasa. Yeah, it's dumb. It dumb. It real dumb stuff you can do with this Fate deck, and you don't really have to think. All these Fate cards are good. Essentially, basically what happens is that the only thing you have to think about is based off the ally placement where the hero should go. Early game, you could probably go for just trying to cover the card spots. Yeah, get Zazu out. Pumbaa give me 9. It's dumb busted. It dumb busted some things you can see in this game. What is it? But like, playing the heroes is probably the only thing you have to think about because the ally placement. Early game, you want to block the actions. So if Scar is here, you know, you might want to it all varies based off where the allies are. It becomes incredibly difficult to play these heroes out. But if you don't have a lot of cards out, guess what? You just block their Fate, you block the Gorge, Graveyard, Pride Rock. If you do it in that order, you will destroy Scar. So if you cover the whole board like that, so it doesn't matter even what heroes they are. Let's say that's even the engine right there. You got that out or that. That right there does a whole lot in itself. Doing that will completely destroy him. That will just make it so he never will want to play the game again. And like I said, ignore the fact that this is Simba. Like, just the placement of the heroes here makes this a hell of a time for Scar. He just has an incredibly difficult time. And honestly, too, the thing with Hakuna Matata, guess what? If there's heroes in the succession pile, play it. Just play it. I know I said, like, oh, keep them at bay. It's still good to do so because you are going to play a hero out. Even if you drew, like, let's say, Rafiki and Hakuna Matata. You might be tempted to play Rafiki, but all in all, Hakuna Matata is going to be better because guess what? It's just like what we talked about with Hades. You know, like if the Hades player is playing way too aggressively up front and playing a get ready to rumbles, if you could go the distance, you can make them regret all that power they spent. It's the same thing with Hakuna Matata. Make them regret killing that hero. That's kind of the idea. And the cool thing too, guess what? Prophecies. Oh man, those prophecies are so nice. Mufasa. Prophecy. Stick. Like I said, super easy stuff to do. Mufasa's out. Play a prophecy on him. Oh, guess what? Either play a stick on him. You know, all that stuff's good. Like, it's very obvious. It's very obvious what to play at the right times. Because even stuff like Nala. Because the thing is, if you draw Nala and Hakuna Matata, and it's like, oh, I can move Mufasa out of the way of the stuff. Oh wait, I could play Nala, and then move Mufasa, blocking more actions. All that stuff. Now, one thing I will say with the placement, you have to be aware of stampedes. There are only 2 of them in the deck, but don't stack heroes next to each other. Play them like a spread like this first. That's why, like I'm saying, like Savannah, Gorge, Pride Rock, Elephant Graveyard. Even though we're going to be keeping these actions right here, they aren't going to be doing a whole lot else at those 2 places. So their places to gain power and play cards are kind of gone. So that's my advice to there. Because if you play Stampede, they won't be able to double vanquish. That's the big key. Because like I said, if you do something like this, and they still got the stuff to kill Mufasa or whatnot. You play Stampede, Rafiki, Murder. You can move Stampede over and kill Mufasa with the Stampede. Lots of little tricks. Lots of little stuff. So you got to make sure you space out the heroes. Now, once you got something like this, you're set. Yeah, you're good to go. It's relatively simple. Like, even like if you want to play Sarabi and you could discard a Hyena, but you're like, let me just block more actions. Do it. Just do it. Like, all intents and purposes, do it. Something to keep in mind too, and this is gonna be a very controversial statement. Weakest fate card in the entirety of Scar's Fate deck is Simba. Simba's not that threatening. Now, granted, he is 5 strength. He's going to take more to kill. But here's the deal. He cannot be returned using Hakuna Matata. Most of these heroes are, by default, are 3. So playing 2 hyenas by base will be required to kill. I think part of what he's trying to do is make it so characters that have prophecy on them, if you don't stack the hyenas all at one space, you can't. It's like in this situation, let's say Rafiki was here and you played a prophecy. Normally, you only have to burn 2. With Simba, you have to burn all 3 in this case to do so, because the most strength that a hyena can have is 2. Even with Simba out, it's kind of dangerous, especially after Mufasa's dead, because like I said, Simba's prime bait for stuff. You should only really play him if he's the only real option and if it'll just block more actions. Like, honestly, I would try not to play Simba. Even the early game stuff, like playing Simba, I would not recommend. Like, even, because if he's out there and Mufasa gets killed, he's prime target to be killed next. So I would say even playing Timon is better than playing Pumbaa. I'm just saying that straight up, because at least with Timon, they got to put another hyena out, to take care of them. So they're going to have to spend more money, and then they're down a hyena at that location. So, just saying, weakest fate card of this deck. Not to say it's still a bad fate card. Still a really good fate card. So, it definitely, what this does is that this counters anyone trying to stack all the hyenas at one location. And the thing is, like I said, if you're playing Scar right, this card kind of becomes obsolete if you're playing that strategy, which is obviously a lot more valuable to play the engine way. So, yeah, finally put the stick on him for the Holy Trinity. Yeah, I know. Holy Trinity of Hawk. Oh, by the way, one more thing before I just finish my thought. Do not willingly pull Rafiki out for Whisper, using Whisper or Long Live the King, unless he's going to guarantee you a victory. Don't ever do that. Even if you're looking for heroes and he pulls out through that way, through like Long Live the King, don't play him. You kind of want to keep him in the stack as much as possible. Him just being played is automatically going to limit what you have to do. And with Hakuna Matata, when he's in the succession pile, it makes that twice as worse. So, just FYI. Yeah. There you go. That's Scar. That's a Scar